I lived in Dillon, Colorado, and there was a fire there, and they brought in all the resources. It was like watching a blockbuster movie. They have these little spotter planes that shoot a little puff of smoke that then the big plane, like 747s that have all that fire retardant, like aim for that smoke. They're pulling a bunch of helicopters pulling water out of the reservoir right there. I'm like, where is all this coming from?
We had a tragic week last month where there were 4 overdose deaths in a week in the city of Boulder. And just you think about that kind of level of suffering and loss of life. It's just appalling.
Now, you and your wife founded a software company in 2020, exited about 19 years later. What lessons from entrepreneurship and success in the private sector have you been able to bring over to your role as mayor?
It was definitely a good learning experience. We started that company in 2000. And ran it for almost 20 years. And so we were kind of co-owners, co-managers. And certainly, being able to run numbers and analyze numbers, obviously the city's budget is far bigger than the amounts of money we were working with in our little business, but you still have to make sure that the books are balancing. So just being able to have some financial savvy, I think, has been helpful. But also just learning how to be part of a functional organization. Like one thing I'm proud about our company is in 20 years, we only had one person ever leave or resign. We had 12 employees when we finished, but almost no turnover. So, we prided ourselves on keeping a good team spirit and a functional atmosphere. And I've tried to bring those approaches as part of city council and as the legislative leader, as the mayor. My colleagues will tell you I do an imperfect job of that, but certainly do my best and able to bring some of those lessons to bear.
How would you describe your leadership style? Maybe when you were in corporate America with your own business and now as the leader of the city?
I'm definitely somebody who looks for consensus, right? So I'm not necessarily the person like running out in front, waving the flag, say, everybody follow me and do exactly what I tell you. It's more of okay, we need to get to this place roughly going forward, all right? Let's all talk about the best way to get there. Okay, I want to hear your ideas. And then how can I, help us get there as a team? I remember we did as a team building exercise for our company, we did an escape room a couple times, super fun. But rather than being the one who tried to solve all the puzzles, I was like, okay, which puzzle needs the most attention? Oh, and Andy's really good at those. Andy, can you come over here, maybe help with that one? Kind of sort of supporting from the back to make sure that everybody's kind of where they need to be. So, my focus as mayor is to make sure that we get our initiatives done, right? That we find a productive path forward, the path of possibility to get things on our work plan done, to get our housing initiatives accomplished, things we're working on with parks and open space and all these other things, the comprehensive plan, and just make sure that we as a council are working together with our staff partners and the community to get to those places that we want to go.
Mm-hmm. What does the day-to-day look like for you?
Email, a lot of email. I mostly work from home. So we do have a little office in City Hall, but I'm generally either at home on phone calls or emails, or I'm out in the community. So I go to many, many, many community events to support people out doing the nonprofits and NGOs and things like that. And then, of course, many meetings with council members, city staff, community members, heads of local organizations and such. So lots of talking, lots of emailing.
And what's your team look like? Who's supporting you? Who are you interacting with on the day-to-day?
So, we have what's called a council manager form of government in the city of Boulder. And what that means is that the city manager is the executive head of city government. So she's Nuri Rivera-Vandermeide. She's an extraordinary leader, and she's the one kind of running the city on a day-to-day basis. And my job as mayor is as head of the legislative branch of the city council. So I pretty much fly solo. We do have an amazing council assistant, Megs Valier, who supports the entire council. But it's funny, I'll go to conferences and there'll be mayors from bigger cities with a whole entourage. And I'm always I'm just here by myself. Hi, everybody, kind of doing my own thing. So it's funny, people have a kind of a stereotype of a mayor from TV shows or movies, where you're like, the mayor's like shouting at the police chief, "Hey, we need results on this immediately. Get back to me, in 3 hours, tell me and not how it works here in Boulder at all. It's really a policy job, as well as the ceremonial position, of whenever there's speech to be given or an event to be at. So it's a little different from people's kind of vision of what a mayor is like.
Yeah, Hollywood makes it look like you got a bunch of bodyguards and you're rolling around doing, I don't know, doing big things. I'm sure you are doing big things, but it's just you.
It's just me. It's definitely different. I'll tell a fun little story. I actually had a fact-checking call from somebody who was making a movie. And in LA, there was in the movie, the mayor of LA is running for re-election, and then his daughter gets kidnapped. And the person asked me, okay, if you're running for mayor, what would you have up on your wall? And I said, probably precinct maps. I think you probably have the precinct maps of the areas. You need to be circling them, important ones, putting it, So I definitely recommend precinct maps for somebody running for mayor. They're like, oh, I hadn't thought of that. Thanks for that suggestion. So anyway, I'm not sure when that movie comes out, I'm hoping to see some precinct maps on the wall.
Yeah, we'll look for a credit for you in the at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
What's something else that might surprise people about your position or role that they might not realize?
Well, I've already given my first one.
Mm-hmm.
So what else? I don't know if it would be surprising, but I guess maybe how decentralized we all are, in terms of working from our various home offices and coming together for city council meetings. But I think people often envision City Hall as the place where everybody has an office and you're there 24/7, or at least during business hours. Like, did you ever watch Parks and Recreation, that show?
Yep.
Like when Leslie Knope has, when she runs for city council and gets the job, she has an office.
Mm-hmm.
And in a city of that size, I'll just say that is not realistic. Pawnee would not have separate offices for their city council members.
Because of the cost, there just isn't a need.
Yeah, and because it's not an executive role, right? You're not the one running the city. You're not giving the orders day by day, hour by hour. So, having an office in City Hall is just not necessary.
Maybe help us understand what are the different roles in the city of Boulder? Like who's running things? I guess in my mind, naively, I thought you were running things. Who's on your team that's kind of in that kind of a way?
Yeah, so that's the city manager, that I mentioned, Nuria, that I mentioned
Mm-hmm.
earlier. And then there's also the city attorney, Teresa Taylor-Tate, who runs the city attorney's division. The city council hires 3 positions, city manager, city attorney, and then the municipal judge. So those 3 individuals are our direct reports. And then they each run their section of the government, right, on a day-to-day basis. And so then it's up to us as a body to set the policy for the city, to pass the ordinances and give directions on policy. And then city staff carries out the policy directives that city council sets. And that's done by those heads of those different departments.
How much staff is in the city of Boulder?
I think we're about 1,600 right now. I mean, obviously it fluctuates, day to day with hirings and people who retire and such, but somewhere in that neighborhood.
So 1,600 staff, and I believe there's about 100,000 residents.
106,000, something like that.
And are about 40,000 of them students at CU?
I think closer to 34, 35,000, but yeah.
And so with a huge percentage of the population being students, what do you see as some of the opportunities and obstacles of having such a huge student body here?
Well, it's a huge part of our identity as the city of Boulder. And there was a tipping point for our community back 150 odd years ago, where the territory of Colorado was becoming a state. And they were citing 2 institutions in the soon-to-be state of Colorado. And one of them was the state prison, and one of them was the state university. And Canyon City said, hey, prison, lots of good jobs, we're in for it. And so all the prisons are in the Canyon City area. The residents of Boulder said, we would love to have a university. And in fact, a group of them put together money to purchase the land where Old Main is located right now. And so it was very forward thinking of those residents back then, because they set so much of the identity of the city by bringing the university in here. I like to talk about how number one thing that defines Boulder is our beautiful mountain backdrop and the Flatirons. And the number 2 is the university, is CU. And so it's a huge part of who we are. And, there's this rhythm and flow to the year as students, leave for summer break, come back. It's sort of like a natural rhythm that we have. Winter break, et cetera. And so like in the summer, things are a little calmer, and then there's all this excitement and energy when CU comes back in the fall, which I always look forward to. I really love to see the students back in town. So, we have a youthful energy to the city. There's a dynamism. There's also an intellectual aspect to it. Our cultural scene is much stronger than a typical city of 100,000 people. And then, past CU, there's the federal labs that have come here. There's 17 of those. Many of those are here because CU is here. So the effects are very wide reaching, and it's so much a part of what makes Boulder an amazing place to live.
From your opinion as mayor, how has Deion Sanders impacted our city?
Substantially, right? Like, it's been so exciting that you think about the first year that he was here, and we're on ESPN. They're hosting the big ESPN shows from right there outside of Folsom Field, and you're seeing like the Flatirons in the background of all these shows. It's a very surreal experience to have that national spotlight focused on us. So lots of energy, lots of activity, lots of interest. It certainly raised our profile a little bit as a city, and certainly obviously in the football arena. So it's been a really positive thing. A lot of really good energy that's come from having Deion Sanders in town, and so much excitement. The spring game in past years, would just get a few thousand attendees because it's a scrimmage, right? Like, it's the two teams playing against each other at CU, but it's sold out the last 2 years. And the fact that essentially a scrimmage is selling out that huge stadium is really amazing. Shows how much attention there is on the program.
Now, as the mayor, do you get to interact with Deion, with other kind of big names that come through town? You attend events in that way? Is that one of the perks of your position?
With some of them, Deion is in his own world, right? He has such a high profile with the reality TV shows and all of these things. So we haven't interacted much. I definitely, go to games every so often to be part of the excitement. But so, some people that come through, I'm definitely meeting, and others I'm not.
Hey, I just wanted to jump in here and give a quick shout out to the sponsor of today's podcast, B Micro, the easiest way to sneak vegetables into any meal. Due to soil depletion, GMOs, and monocropping, Americans are not getting enough nutrients. So in 2018, I founded B Micro, the first freeze-dried microgreens company in the U.S. to help Americans get more concentrated natural nutrients into their diet. Microgreens are a phase in the plant's life when they're 14 days old and naturally the most concentrated in vitamins, minerals, nutrients, all the good things that we need. Our microgreens are grown here in the U.S. in soil in a greenhouse. They're certified USDA organic and regenerative organic. We grow, wash, and freeze dry them to extend their 1-week shelf life to over 1 year, allowing us to ship anywhere in the U.S. without the worry of spoilage. We have 2 flavors, broccoli, backed by over 2,000 studies on sulforaphane and its powerful detox benefits, and a blend of red cabbage, radish, and broccoli, the most potent detox formula we've tested, offering you the most bang for your buck. Easily sneak these microgreens in any meal. Eggs, smoothies, pizza, pasta, even your kids' mac and cheese, you can't even taste it. Use code STEVE15 to save at bmicro.farm.
Another big resident in town is Kimball Musk, and Elon Musk's brother, and he had a very famous TED Talk where he says food is the next internet, kind of hinting towards a agricultural food innovation, just big change on the horizon. How is Boulder, or what are your thoughts on that, and how is Boulder in support of agriculture and food?
Yeah, well, we have an amazing local food scene. I just had a delicious lunch downtown, and the kitchen is certainly a part of that, right? When the Kimball Musk came here, it's probably a little over 20 years now, and opened the kitchen and the kitchen upstairs, and fantastic restaurants. So we have a fantastic food scene here, and a lot of it is farm to table, right? We're taking advantage of the local organic ingredients and then bringing those to the table. I think about like Bramble and Hare, about how they own their own Black Cat farms, right? They have their own farm, and then they're serving vegetables and meats that they've raised right there on their own farm. And I mention them in particular because they actually leased the land from their farm for their farm from the city of Boulder. So in our open space program, which is of course world renowned, we have 45,000 plus acres of municipally owned open space. And a lot of that land is agricultural. And so we do a direct support for agriculture in terms of preserving it and then fostering it here at the city. And a lot of that is in kind of larger production like hay fields, things like that. But we look for as many opportunities to lease to those organic multiple vegetable farmers as well. So Black Cat Farms is a great example, and there are others too. So it's a great way for us to support local organic agriculture directly on city property.
Do you have any idea on the the output of produce agriculture that Boulder is doing, or how many farms, how many farmers, is that on the rise? Any insight in those ways?
I don't have specific statistics at my fingertips, but I do know that fostering more of those organic farms is a goal of ours. So it's something we've been working on for quite some time, and we keep looking for more places in the system where we can encourage those to set up.
So I have a natural products business. We grow, wash, and freeze dry microgreens, and I've been at the Boulder Farmers Market as a vendor for several years. Gotten to know many of these farms, part of several CSAs. When you go to the farmers market, what are you getting?
So I was just at the market on Saturday. It is so much fun. It's one of the best possible things you can do in the city of Boulder, right? Like there's nothing better on a Saturday morning than hitting the farmers market and checking out what the latest produce is. So I'll tell you what I bought. What I did is I got an heirloom tomato, and I got 2 skinny cucumbers, and then a living head of butter lettuce, and brought those all home. And then a couple of days ago made an absolutely delicious salad with these fresh. I mean, you can't get any fresher than grown locally, just picked, or in the case of the head of lettuce, still growing right there at that time. So it's delicious salad, and I think I'm going to make another one tonight.
Do you ever purchase microgreens?
Not as often. I'm not so familiar with microgreens. It's something I should learn more about.
Sure. So quickly, they're just a phase in the plant's life when they're about 14 days old, and naturally the most concentrated. So they're in vitamins, minerals, nutrients, unique antioxidants. So they're just baby vegetables. Very tasty, typically used at high-end restaurants as a garnish, but many communities enjoy them for their health benefits. It's a very easy way to sneak a lot more vegetables in just a couple of spoons.
I love it. I'll have to look for that the next time.
Yep. Now, if it's any time of the year, everything's in season, what are you getting?
I mean, I'm a big tomato lover. Like I will never pass up a fresh grown tomato, which may be because my father grew tomatoes when I was growing up in our backyard. Absolutely delicious tomatoes. I think I'm still searching for that tomato from my childhood.
Do you remember what kind it was?
I mean, I think they were pretty typical. This is like 40 odd years ago where people weren't kind of as into the varieties. So I think it was your pretty typical kind of beefsteak sort of tomato, but
hard to beat on a BLT.
So good. They were so good. So that's always going to be my go-to. It's a good tomato.
We're also pretty well known for our peaches. Looking at being part of the market, almost envious sometimes of where there's lines. 30, 50 people will be lined up for our Palisade peaches. That's a really unique thing that we have. Also, our cantaloupes, we do a good job. A lot of people don't know about that. A lot of orchard fruits, apples, cherries.
Well, local cherries, that's one of my favorite. West Slope cherries, so good. Particularly I forget the name of them now, but not the red ones, but the more multicolored ones. Those are so good.
So when it comes to the stewardship of the natural spaces, what is Boulder's approach to taking care of all its trails, parks, recreational areas?
Well, I mentioned the open space system earlier, and that's its own department, and it has significant dedicated revenue. So like when you go, say, buy a tomato at a store, about 1% of the sales tax that you're paying is going to our open space program. And so in the past, that was used mostly for purchasing the system, but it's mature and we don't buy things very often these days anymore. So that's maintenance. It's about taking care of what we have. So we have all these crews, including a fantastic program called the Junior Ranger Program, which takes teenagers out for a summer and has them work on trail maintenance and construction. And whenever I'm out on a hike and I see the Junior Rangers, I always go over and say hi and say, "Hey, everybody! I happen to be the mayor. How's it going? Are you having a good time?" And they're always, even when they're sweating and working, you can tell that they're really enjoying that program. So we've been able to catch up on a backlog after the flood in 2013 that damaged almost all of our trails. And so for years we were catching up to repair those. But I think by now, we've pretty much gotten through that backlog. And now we're implementing the plans from the West Trail Study area that was passed 11 years ago or so. So improving trails, building new ones, closing down social trails. They're working super hard on it all the time.
Can you give us an idea of the scale of how much open space, trails, what the crews look like, what the team looks like for supporting it all?
I don't have the exact numbers, but like those junior ranger, I think they have 2 crews of 15, something like that, out there every summer. The maintenance department is certainly substantial. And they've been bringing on some really good new trails online. The North Sky Trail is the biggest example recently that goes from the north part of Boulder up to Joder Ranch, about 3 miles north. And so that's a little over 3 miles. You can walk it, you can bike it, you can ride a horse. And it's just stunningly beautiful vistas through there. It's grassland. Definitely worth a try if you haven't been up there before.
What's your favorite hike in town?
I mean, that's a little bit like asking which of my children is my favorite. There's so many good ones. Tried and true, it's hard to top the Mesa Trail. Just being up below those Flatirons, walking along, looking out to the plains, looking up to the Flatirons in the pine forest, getting down into the draws with the creeks. Mesa Trail and say May or June is really hard to beat. Actually going out there on Friday, I've got a hike planned with a friend. We're going to hike the Mesa Trail.
And about how long does that trail take? I don't think I've done that one.
So if you did the whole thing, it's a little over 7 miles. So I'd say one of the best days you can spend in Boulder is to park a car at Chautauqua and then carpool down to the South Mesa Trailhead and then hike the 7.5 miles one way, get lunch or a snack at the Chautauqua Dining Hall, and then go pick up the other car and go home. That's maybe a 4 or 5 hour outing, and it's one of the best ways to spend 4 or 5 hours in the entire world.
Oh, beautiful. So that's what the day looks like. What's a recommended evening? What's a good evening in town look like for you?
Not a hike so much, but just out on the town kind of. Well, downtown, I'm a huge fan of downtown and all it has to offer. So I'd say my peak Boulder evening would be going to one of the amazing restaurants in downtown along Pearl Street and then going to the Boulder Theater for a concert. So whenever if I have a favorite band coming into town, I'm definitely going to be spending night out doing that.
Who are you seeing? What are some of the bands that you've enjoyed that have come through?
Oh, there are so many. And I like all kinds of music. So I go to kind of a random mix of them. But like one standout was the jazz trio, The Bad Plus, was here with Joshua Redman, saxophonist. That was amazing. The Decemberists were here a few years ago. I really enjoyed seeing them. Quick little story, that's a band that plays some pretty big venues. And so he's there at the Boulder Theater, and in the audience, you're just right up against the stage. And the lead singer, I'm forgetting his name, but he goes up, he looks down, he's like, "Hello, Boulder, you're very close." Anyway, so many good bands at the Boulder Theater, right? It's hard to beat.
Yeah, I recently saw the Whalers. So Bob Marley and the Whalers, they're phenomenal.
Amazing.
They come through often. That's phenomenal. I saw them at Chautauqua and at Boulder Theater, but there's no beating Boulder Theater. And then Trevor Hall comes through every once in a while. I mean, he's sold out Red Rocks multiple times. Last time I saw him at the Boulder Theater, I think he has some like residents in town, or his family is in town, because his family was in the crowd. And he brought his dad up to play the guitar, to play the drums. Yeah.
Okay, super fun. Yeah, so it's a great place.
Now, talking Pearl Street, there, would you call it like a walking garden? The gardens that go through Pearl Street are just world class. And as soon as any flowers start to fade, it seems like they're instantly transplanted, replanted, and just the vibrancy of the nature through Pearl Street is second to none.
Absolutely. It's Pearl Street. The Pearl Street Mall is actually a city park. And so our parks department maintains that, and they do a phenomenal job in collaboration with the Downtown Boulder Partnership. And so they've got the tulips out right now. They just had the tulip fairy, with all the little kids with their fairy outfits on. It was the most cute thing you've ever seen in your entire life. But yeah, and then they vary those year round. They replant those multiple times during the year.
So staying on our walking mall and open spaces, what is the vision for urban nature in Boulder?
Certainly there's the open space system, but that's protecting the environment, around the city, right? And so that's a little different from nature within Boulder. So we certainly have a high priority for that. We have a very healthy parks program with one of the best systems around. And we have a goal to have a neighborhood park within a 15-minute walk of every resident. And we're close to meeting that goal and still developing new ones occasionally. Like there's one up by me. I live in North Boulder, Violet Park, which is along Violet Avenue. is going to be renamed Primos Park and is getting built out later this year or next year with a lot of nature play aspects to it because it's along a creek, 4 Mile Canyon Creek. And so there's going to be, some recreation facilities, but it's going to have a real focus on getting kids into nature, experiencing nature and nature play opportunities.
Tell us about the drinking water in Boulder. Where does it come from and how is that cared for?
I could talk for a long time about this and bore everyone absolutely stiff because I geek out on this pretty quickly. So we have 3 major sources of drinking water, and one of them is Middle Boulder Creek and one of them is North Boulder Creek. So those are close to each other. So those are coming up from the Continental Divide. And we actually own an entire drainage basin up there. The city of Boulder does, where much of our drinking water is coming from. That's actually closed to the public. So we own something like 2,500 acres up there. And we have multiple dams in that drainage area, and then, release that water as needed down further in. And then that water flows through to the Batasso water treatment plant, which is up above town in the Batasso area. Obviously, you can see it from town if you ever look up down Boulder Canyon. And so that the treated water goes from there down into our pipes. And fun fact, at least if you geek out on these things like I do, you need to slow the water down because it's going too fast at too high a pressure because of the elevation drop. And so you could spend energy to slow it down. But what we do is we have hydroelectric facilities on those major pipes coming from the water treatment plant. So it slows the water down to an acceptable pressure for domestic water. And then we're generating power with it as well. So we're getting clean electricity out of our water system there. And then the last third of it comes from the Colorado Big Thompson Project, which is western slope water from the headwaters of the Colorado River. So we're one of many cities that has a share of the CBT, as it's called. And that flows from Loveland down to the Boulder Reservoir. There's a supply canal that goes there. It goes by Rabbit Mountain. And so that goes to the Boulder Reservoir. And then we have another water treatment plant up by there that supplies some of the additional drinking water to the city.
And is there any concerns around camp contamination or supply or demand or?
Say we have some of the best water in the country, right? Because it's coming from just a few miles away, and it's pure snow melt that we're getting from those areas. So very high quality water. So you do not need to filter the water in Boulder, right? Like you want to, you can, but it's certainly not necessary. It's very clean, very good tasting, very high quality. So obviously we're always monitoring for contaminants, and we test and meet and exceed all of the required levels. And we do keep an eye on things like, there's currently a proposal to reopen a mine up above Nederland. So we're keeping a careful eye on that. If that does get reopened, that it's done in a way that has absolutely no impact to our drinking water, because we place a very high priority on keeping that safe.
Okay, I live up Linden, so up the foothills a little bit, and there was a fire, and with that fire, they brought in those planes that dump the fire retardant. Does that ever find its way into the drinking water? Because we got a sign put on our door saying, "Hey, for a little while, this might be an issue."
Yeah, well, and you all have a separate water system up there. You're not on city water.
Oh,
so that area has its own dedicated water and sewer infrastructure, separate from the city of Boulder. It's something that we watch out for. In other parts of the country, fire retardant has led to some PFAS contamination. Those are the forever chemicals that people talk about. We have no PFAS in our water, so that's not something we have to worry about. And I believe that the updated slurry formula that they use doesn't have those contaminants. So something you have to keep a careful eye on, but I think our system is pretty well protected from it.
So where I live, I look down on the beginning of the goat trail for Sanitas, and there's a huge building with a giant flat roof. Is that a water treatment plant?
It's a water storage facility.
Okay.
So it's not being treated there, but it's being held there. So yeah, that's just near the Wonderland Lake area that you're talking about. Yeah, that's a city water storage facility.
So with our water, we use that and other means for wildfire resilience. Can you tell us about the risks that our community faces from fires and what the city does to help mitigate those?
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge risk factor for the city, no question. So floods and wildfires are our biggest natural disaster risks. And wildfires are front of everyone's minds after the disasters in the Los Angeles area, right? So those thousands of homes that were lost. And of course, the Marshall Fire, over 1,000 homes lost just outside the city. So we place a very high priority on wildfire prevention and resilience. And it's one of our priorities that we're working on as a city right now, as a city council and as city staff. So we're looking at new regulations that we'll be passing later this year to increase the requirements for fire mitigation in the wildland-urban interface, the WUI interface. So we'll be updating those regulations and making them stricter so as to minimize the chance of fire. And then we are one of the few cities our size that has a dedicated wildland fire team. So we have a professional team, full-time, year-round, that they're cross-trained so they can do other things because obviously there aren't fires all the time. But they're available year-round, as well as there's cross-training in the rest of our fire department as well to deal with wildfires. And I'm proud to say we actually sent that wildland fire team to Los Angeles to help fight the Palisades fire when that was still raging. So we did a mutual aid. They got in their truck, drove for a couple of days out there, and then were stationed for, I think it was 2 to 3 weeks, helping out with that fire effort.
What does our infrastructure look like around our fire teams? How many stations, engines? Are there helicopters and planes? What's that all look like?
We have 8 fire stations, and the 8th one is the Wildland Fire Station up by Boulder Reservoir. And we actually just replaced fire station number 3, not far away from your office here, just up 30th Street.
Beautiful.
Isn't it though?
Mm-hmm.
It's such a beautiful municipal building.
And will the old one shut down, or what will the old one turn into? Because that's right by Home Depot, right?
It is, yeah. So it's in the floodplain. And so it was aging, so it's getting past its useful life anyway, but we had to move it because the previous one was in the floodplain. And so they actually have our swiftwater rescue unit is out of fire station number 3. But in the event of a big flood, they would have had to rescue themselves first in that station. So it's in I believe, the high hazard zone, which means you can't really build anything there. Mm-hmm. So there's some chance we might keep part of the building like as a museum or something, but you can't really have full-time habited uses there.
What's going on at the new fire station? I mean, it's huge. Is there trainings going on there? Is that like the new headquarters for our fire team?
It is the new headquarters. You're exactly right. Yeah, before they were, the administrative staff and the leadership were dispersed and either didn't have offices or impromptu offices. They were really having to make do. And so they're now centralized, the chief, the deputy chief, and others in that building. So I toured it just after it opened. And so lots of activity, administrative activity going on there. And then, of course, the fire engines. And that was built big enough so that it can support a full ladder truck. We only have one large ladder truck in the city right now. That's at fire station number 1, which is near Broadway and Alpine. So this will provide long-term the ability to have a second full ladder truck as well. And so we've got multiple teams living and working out of there as well. So it's built kind of with extra room for growth, but you got a lot of administration going on there too.
So Boulder has their own resources. Do we have planes and helicopters or anything in that kind of way, or does that come from like a state level?
Mostly federal level.
Oh, federal.
Yeah. So actually the state just purchased its first fire helicopter a couple of years ago. And I think that's based out of Jeffco, if I recall. So that was the first time that we've had state level infrastructure. Most states don't have that. California does. CAL FIRE is a huge, huge organization. But most states don't. So that was a good movement forward. And I believe they're securing another one before too long as well. So there's some state level resources that can be brought to bear. But when you see most of the helicopters and the planes, all that aerial, all those aerial resources, most of those are federal level.
And where do you think they're coming from?
It varies. And I actually am not fully up on the federal fire infrastructure, so I can't tell you exactly where they're located. Sure. But generally they're of a scale that if you have a major fire going on in Colorado, you're able to bring enough resources to bear, hopefully to take care of that. But if you have multiple ones burning at the same time, then those resources start to get stretched thinner and thinner. And that's where our biggest risk factor comes, is either something, colossal and fast moving like the Marshall Fire, or when there are multiple fires happening at once. Those are our biggest risk factors.
In 2018, right before I moved to Boulder, I lived in Dillon, Colorado, and there was a fire there, and they brought in all the resources. It was like watching a blockbuster movie. They have these little spotter planes that shoot a little puff of smoke that then the big plane, like 747s that have all that fire retardant, like aim for that smoke. They're pulling a bunch of helicopters pulling water out of the reservoir right there. I'm like, where is all this coming from? It was unbelievable to watch. So has Boulder ever had to call in resources like that?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. For multiple fires over the years. There was the NCAR fire that was maybe 3 years ago, where we definitely got some of that level of help. But I've lived here 21 years now, and there have been, I'm going to get the number wrong, but maybe 6 fires that have been close enough to the city to be a really significant threat to the city of Boulder. And every single time, we've called on outside resources to help with those.
What do you spend most of your time thinking about, lately? What's been on your mind?
The federal government, the way that it's being dismantled, because there are a lot of organizations locally that rely upon federal funding. So CU has a huge amount of federal grant funding. We have 17 national labs, as I mentioned before. Those obviously are federal labs. So, NOAA's had some layoffs, and there's likely to be others. And then the city of Boulder gets grant funding from the federal government as well. So whether we'll get new grants is certainly in question, but there's also a danger of losing grants that had previously been given to the city, but that have not been fully spent. So we're spending a lot of time looking at what our risk levels are and what happens if we lose those grants. How could we replace them? Things like that.
Is it if you don't use it, you lose it? Or is it those programs and grants are just being deleted?
Deleted, yeah. Unfortunately, it's because we would use all of those grants. We would spend all of that money. It's just we're not quite done yet with some of those projects. So the formal word is rescission of grants. That's what's starting to happen, and there are all kinds of lawsuits going on around it. So the current administration has been doing these grant rescissions, and then people sue because the Congress was the one who actually passed those grants, and the executive branch doesn't technically have the authority to cancel them. And so this is all being fought out in the courts right now.
Help us understand how else the Trump administration has an impact on the city of Boulder.
Well, funding is the biggest one. So, there's a possibility of lawsuits in other areas. They just sued the state of Colorado. Who knows? So it's hard to say what other impacts there could be, but certainly funding is top of mind right now.
What else is there for you what can people do at a local level to get involved and to make sure their voices are heard, or if people are maybe, frustrated about this or want to make some type of a impact, how can people get involved at a local level?
Well, this is kind of outside the municipal government role. So I'll just speak as somebody who's following these other political issues. You can certainly call and write your congresspeople and senators, about these topics. There are protests going on a regular basis. There have been ones at NIST the last several weeks. I actually just spoke at one on May Day. So those are ways to get involved. There are local organizations, working on some of these things. It is happening at the federal level, so opportunities at the local level are a little limited, but you can look for those groups that are working in this space and get involved with them.
Now, Boulder being so focused on health and wellness, part of the cabinet is RFK Jr., and he's run on the MAHA, Make America Healthy Again. How is his work making an impact on the city of Boulder?
There hasn't been anything direct yet that I'm aware of. So we'll see. Certainly, I worry about the possibility of vaccine availability being limited, which would have an impact on our residents because we keep lots of people safe from all kinds of diseases with those vaccines. So if those are made less available, that's going to have a real health impact on our city. So hopefully we don't see anything like that.
Mm-hmm. Something else that he ran on was fluoride in the water. Do we treat our water with fluoride?
We do, yes. At low safe levels. We're well within the margins that are required by clean water drinking regulations. So we're confident about the safety of that program. Certainly, as I understand it, it's been one of the big public health successes of the last 70 years in terms of reducing cavities and tooth decay and tooth loss and all of those things with a small amount of fluoride provided in city water. So we're not looking at that at all right now.
What do you do to take care of yourself? What does self-care look like?
For me, a hike, a good walk or a hike is my top thing for sure. Getting out into nature, preferably. But I try to at least get in, a good walk around my neighborhood, particularly as the weather's been getting better and warmer. Not today; it's pretty chilly and rainy today, but it's been getting better. And I'll tell you, I often like to listen to music as I'm walking around. But with all the birds that have returned to town, I take those earbuds out and just listen to the bird song.
Mm-hmm. How would you describe your diet? What are you eating?
My diet. I have all kinds of dietary restrictions. I could tell you all about them, but it'd be very boring. So I have a limited diet. So it's like a low-fat, dairy-free, no tree nuts. Good mix of carbs and protein. Kind of similar to the Mediterranean diet. A lot of fish.
We have a lot of parks in the city. I wonder how many. Maybe any idea how many parks that we have in the city?
I don't. It's multiple dozens, but I don't have the exact number.
Yeah. So there's within the parks, there's we have. I wonder how big of a I don't know the politically correct term, but homeless encampments that seem to kind of move from one park to the other. How does the city think about that with trying to support the homeless and keep the parks in a safe, clean, enjoyable way?
Yeah, absolutely. This is one of the most challenging issues that we deal with, if not the most challenging, probably is the most challenging, because we have this national societal failure. Homelessness is at record levels throughout the country. It's been going up steadily for years. And so, what we really need, I would say fundamentally on this problem is a federal intervention, kind of like a moonshot sort of program to end homelessness. They're the only government with the resources to tackle that. That's not happening. So we have to deal with it at a local level. And folks experiencing homelessness, they're all different kinds of people, just like any other group. But, there are high levels of untreated mental health issues and substance abuse problems with some of those folks, which, can be difficult to get treatment for. So we're always trying to fundamentally help people. So try to get them into shelter, into housing, particularly, if they have strong ties to the community. We employ a strategy called Housing First, where we have, at this point, over 250 apartments around the city where people who were formerly homeless now have an apartment. There are certainly ground rules. You got to be friendly to your neighbors. You can't be violent, things like that. But you're not required to have solved all of your problems in order to move into that. And then people are provided with wraparound services after they move in. So that's been hugely successful. A new facility called the Bluebird just opened on 30th Street last year, which is, I think, 35 apartments. So there's 35 people who were on the streets a year ago and now have an apartment. But there's still some folks in town, who are unsheltered. And so we also have the Boulder Shelter, which has 160 beds for folks there. And they do that in part with city funding and city partnership. So they're a great organization. And other organizations like Haven Ridge, Attention Homes. There's all these, which is now called Together. Lots of organizations, Bridge House, who are working on this problem. So definitely oriented towards helping people, but we also don't allow camping in public spaces. So there is a camping ban in the city. And I think, people setting up a tent in a public park is not a good outcome for anybody. First of all, we should get people into shelter. Second of all, that public park should be for the use of everyone and not strictly for the use of people to live there. Because if you have 15 tents in a park, probably nobody else is going to go there while there are 15 people living there. So for those reasons, we do have a camping ban that does get enforced regularly. And we have a whole team that works on this. It's called the SAMPS team. They do great work. They do it very compassionately, always trying to help people find where they can go instead, while making it clear that, hey, you can't have a tent here. And as we were coming, while we were during the COVID period, there were some very large encampments that with lots of tents and some trash and problems like this. And we're at the point where we don't have those kind of larger semi-permanent encampments anywhere in town because we have been working on that SAMPS program for a couple of years.
Is there a common theme amongst the homeless? Is it age, race, nationality, maybe mental health or addiction? Any type of common themes?
As I said, it's a diverse population, right? Like any other group, people have come from all different backgrounds, and people shouldn't think that like, oh well, my family, we're relatively well off. We love each other. That this would never happen in our family. A lot of folks experiencing homelessness came from just that kind of a background. Who maybe 5 years ago, had a solid job and were living with a family, and you would think, well, they're very stable. And now 5 years later, they're out on the streets. So the reasons why that happened are they're myriad. There's not any one background story. I will say that I think one of the ways that our society is failing its population most fundamentally is in the lack of available substance abuse treatment and mental health treatment, because those are very common pathways is for people to suffer a really bad substance abuse problem or mental health issue. It doesn't get treated. There aren't the resources. And, eventually their life spirals out of control and they're unhoused. So I do feel like we're failing as a society in those areas.
And is that where you're seeing that federal moonshot might come in? That might be part of it.
That's what's needed. What is it now? Maybe 50 or so years ago, a little bit less, they closed all the asylums, right? And those were terrible places. They were horrible places. You think about One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, right? And the abuses that took place in those. So closing them was the right thing to do. The problem was that they weren't replaced with anything. So that's where I really see our failing, is that we saw a problem, which was these deeply flawed asylums. But the solution wasn't just to close them. The solution was to do something different and better. And we didn't do that. And so now our asylums are often just, and that's a pejorative word, but like people who are suffering from those issues, they're not necessarily housed anywhere. They're often just out on the streets.
Is there a example of any cities, towns, or even other countries that you're aware of that are doing a good job with this?
There are other countries for sure. Yeah, I mean, like Finland, for example, is a country that has almost no unsheltered homelessness, and they have a very different system. They have a much stronger social safety net. There are other countries where you go that just have a different culture. So, like I was in Nepal a couple of years ago, visiting our sister city of Kathmandu. And that's a country that is vastly poorer than the U.S.
A sister city? What does that mean?
Sister city. It's this common thing worldwide where cities in different countries form a relationship called a sister city or a twin city, and it's about cross-cultural collaboration. So you might send high school students back and forth. So it's about cultural, humanitarian aid, things like that. And we have 10 sister cities in the city of Boulder. Kathmandu is one of the newest ones, and so. I was there a couple of years ago. Fantastic program. But anyway, just what I was saying is that there's Nepal, despite being a much poorer country, has almost no unsheltered homelessness, and it's because they have I'm sure it's complex, but one of the factors is that they have their family systems are very strong, and so people support their family members more than we do in our more individualistic society here. So it's a problem that no city in the U.S. has solved. So there are cities that you can point to that have had some real successes. Like Houston is often called out as a model. They've made substantial reductions in their levels of homelessness. And we actually have hired as a consultant one of the architects of Houston's strategy that's been so successful. And so her and her group, Clutch Consulting, are actually evaluating our homeless services system, and they're recommending changes that we'll be seeing in a couple months.
When it comes to substance abuse, is there one substance that is really is the most harmful to our community, whether it's homeless or otherwise?
I'd say you have kind of a big three here, and one of them is alcohol. Of course, been around for a long time, and alcohol abuse is common in people who are housed and unhoused alike. The death rates from alcohol in our country are sky high. So that's a huge one in terms of the human impact that it has on so many people and families. In terms of street drugs, it's fentanyl and methamphetamine are the big ones. And the death levels from overdoses for fentanyl have skyrocketed in recent years. And we had a tragic week last month where there were 4 overdose deaths in a week in the city of Boulder. And just you think about that kind of level of suffering and loss of life, it's just appalling. There was apparently, I guess there was a bad batch. Somebody had come in selling fentanyl that was tainted with other things. And people were dying all over town, sadly. The lacing of these drugs is a huge problem because sometimes, fentanyl can be fatal in relatively small doses as well. But it's one thing if you're taking it, but people have laced other pills with it, like OxyContin, and then they put fentanyl in it. And so, you might think, I'll just take this as a pain drug, and then it kills you.
Why might they lace OxyContin with fentanyl? Is it malicious?
I mean, I haven't interviewed the dealers who put it together.
Well, why would you even put that in there if you're killing your clients?
So I don't think their goal is to kill people, but I think it's much cheaper to use fentanyl than to use the other drug that you're substituting it for.
With a similar effect? With
a semi-similar effect. And so you can put together a batch, I guess, that's much cheaper and make more money off of it. And, you figure these are amoral individuals and, they're like, well, I saved a few $1,000 and if somebody died, maybe they just don't care. It's hard to know what the psychology is there.
The only crime that I experienced in Boulder was my bike was stolen one time right off the back of my truck at my commercial kitchen. The police came and they're thoughtful and they're like, hey, these, we rarely catch these. They go immediately to a chop shop and then just truck down to Texas, somewhere far away. And I've heard Boulder referred to as the bike theft capital of the country. Any insights into bike thefts in Boulder and why that's such a prominent thing?
Yeah, well, they're unfortunately common. That's for sure. They're far too common. And we love to encourage people to get out of their cars and take a bike ride to get around town.
World-class bike trails.
World-class bike trails, right? And it makes it hard if there are a lot of bike thefts. So it is something that we've been taking very seriously. And the police department, it's one of their priorities is to work on bike theft. We certainly encourage everybody to register your bike because if your bike is registered, the chance of recovering it is much, much higher than if it's not. So that's my advice to everybody out there, register your bike. This police department has a good program with that. But yeah, there are often theft rings, who will go around stealing bikes, high-end bikes, and then resell them somewhere else. And so that's one of the police priorities is to break up these bike theft rings. And, they've had some successes over the years. A couple of years ago, there was a program called Vicious Cycle where they uncovered this bike theft ring that was operating around the region and arrested everybody and, were able to get convictions in that area and continued priority. But, we're also looking at different ways to help, we're setting up a bike valet service for different events around town this summer where people can be confident that their bike is being looked over and being kept safe while they're enjoying their event that they're at. So, we're working on multiple ways to help with this problem. But certainly part of it is that a lot of people ride bikes in Boulder and a lot of them are nice bikes, right? So I don't know that we're the bike theft capital of the country, but it's certainly a significant problem because we got a lot of good bikes here for people to steal.
And so that attracts these rings. The rings come in and are they incentivizing? Are they the ones stealing them themselves, or are they incentivizing other locals, or how are they rounding up so many bikes?
I mean, I think it's a mix. That there are probably theft rings that are doing it themselves. We've certainly heard about multiple break-ins by organized groups, but also if they're buying stolen bikes, then that means that somebody else could say, well, I'm going to steal a bike, and then I know a guy, and I'll be able to sell it to him, something like that. So it's a very high priority to crack down on those and get those folks off the streets.
Mm-hmm.
This podcast is brought to you by Be Micro, organic freeze-dried microgreens for easy, natural nutrition. Sprinkle them on any meal and enjoy the benefits. Shop now at bemicro.farm and use code STEVE15 to save.
As we're approaching the final kind of 10th of our time together, I want to gift you a product that I make.
Oh, nice.
This is freeze-dried microgreens, so those nutritious baby vegetables that I was speaking to. That's a blend of broccoli, radish, and cabbage. And use that as a garnish. Sprinkle it on your eggs, salad, sandwich, smoothie. Just a teaspoon a day is all you need. Don't cook it. 1 teaspoon is equal to 2 cups of leafy greens, and it's very detoxifying. The main benefit is really good at empowering the body to pull bad things out.
Okay. Well, my go-to breakfast is 1 scrambled egg on a piece of whole wheat toast. So I think tomorrow morning I'll do that shot.
Perfect. That sounds great. To close this out, I'd like to do a little lightning round with you.
Oh boy. Okay. Lightning round. Let's go.
Okay, you ready? This is sponsored by Be Micro. What does your relationship with plants and nature look like?
I love to do nature bathing, which is not about getting naked in the woods, but it's about going out and being part of nature and enjoying that. And it'll brighten up your whole day.
Your term goes through November of 2026. Do you know if you'll run again?
I do not. I'm still making my mind up on that one.
Are there term limits for mayors?
There are. You can be mayor for no more than 8 years. So I could run for another term if I wanted to.
How long is the term?
2 years.
Oh, okay. What's the greatest challenge as mayor in 2025?
Oh, goodness. There are a lot of them. But dealing with unsheltered homelessness is our biggest challenge as a city and for me as mayor.
Who are your political mentors or inspirations?
Well, I'd certainly say at a national level, Obama is my favorite president of my lifetime. No question.
I'm from Chicago.
Okay, right on. And locally here, my mentor and my hero is Joe Neguse, our congressman. He is one of the best elected officials at any level of government I've ever encountered, and always inspired by what he says and does.
Describe him.
So he's our congressperson for the city of Boulder and this area, Congressional District 2. He's been in Congress for about 6 years, has been in leadership from day one. He's just an extraordinary individual. His parents were immigrants from Eritrea, refugees, and he's lived in Colorado his whole life. Just has a big heart and an incredible work ethic, good values, and gives a very mean speech. The absolute worst place to be on any agenda is right after Joe Neguse, because you suffer by contrast.
If you were to recommend one book to someone looking to get into politics or just get educated in that kind of way, what might it be?
I don't know about getting into politics, but I just read a book that I was really taken by, which is Abundance by Ezra Klein and Derek Thompson, which is about how we've made it too hard to make good things happen in this country. And we need to get out of our own ways sometimes when it comes to the production of things like housing or transit systems or something like that. We should make those easier to build.
And how have we made it too hard?
Okay, so there's no longer a lightning round here, but so we applied major regulations to make sure we had things like clean water and clean air, and that was all very important. And so we got in essentially a regulating mindset, and then started regulating things that we need more of, and so added additional rules and regulations that have ended up preventing us from building things like renewable energy, train systems, housing, things like this, because we just have we've regulated good things the same way we regulate bad things.
What is the greatest perk of your job?
Trying to think about a perk. I think it's the people that I get to meet and talk to. So I get the chance to meet with so many fascinating people and learn from them and talk to them. So I'd say that'd be the biggest perk.
What's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
I don't know. That's hard. I may have to think about that one and get back to you.
Get back to us.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Aaron. Appreciate you being here. Where can people learn more about you and follow along with what you got?
Well, I'll say you can follow along with everything the city's doing at bouldercolorado.gov. That's got all of our upcoming meetings and all our agenda items and all the community events. So it's a great resource, that city website.
Anything else you'd like to share?
We covered a lot of stuff here. So thanks for having me. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Me too. Thank you, Aaron.
Right. Thank you.
Okay.